So we are going to discuss the tutorial that is based on the employee benefits and the agriculture standard, what you have discussed during the last couple of lectures, right? Okay, then I have taken, so the questions on that. The first question, in fact, this was one of the past paper questions I have taken, that was on agriculture. So the most recent discussion that you had, and then we'll be moving on to the employee benefits, right? So let's read the question together and see. So it's the Barney PLC, which operates a dairy farm, had 60 cows and 20 calves with a fair value less cost to sell of rupees 75,000 per cow and 25,000 per calf as at 1st of April 2019. The following activities took place in the company during the year ended 31st March 2020. So it's a kind of a dairy farm. So it's necessarily a agricultural activity. It's the management of this the biological asset, the biological transformation. So hence it's agricultural activity. And there you can see that there they have a livestock. It's cows, 60 cows are there and 20 calves also there. And the fair value less cost to sell of per cow and also per calf, it's given. And further it says that the following activities took place in the company during the year ended 31st March 2020. The purchased 20 cows at rupees 87,500 per cow, and at that date, the fair value less cost to sell per cow is given. Then 12 calves were matured. So there you have the calves. So they have matured and they become cows. And at that time, the fair value less cost to sell per cow is given. And 15 calves were born during the year, and the fair value less cost to sell per newborn calf is rupees 15,000. They produced 10,000 liters of milk at fair value less cost to sell of rupees 50 per liter. During the period you have produced 10,000 liters of milk, the agricultural produce, and sold 9,000 liters at a price of 80 per liter. Incurred salaries and the other operating cost of rupees 800,000 and a distribution cost of rupees 200,000. Then it asks, as at 31st March 2020, the fair value less cost to sell was determined per cow 92,500 and rupees 27,500 per calf. Then the requirement, sorry, it's not mentioned. It has to be the requirement. Required, calculate the total income recognized of the dairy farm for the year ended 31st March 2020 as per LKS 41 agriculture. And there we expect you to show each income item separately as well. So I have just brought the format as well and see what are the requirements. You're supposed to identify the what do you call that, the total income, then the profit or loss, then the statement of financial question extract. So that is the requirement. Okay. So before I move on to this question, so let me just provide you with a simple briefing on the agriculture standard, the essence I would say. So when it comes to this agriculture standard, so you know that is LKS 41, the agriculture standard. So it basically deals with the biological assets. It's about biological assets. So it's a very unique kind of a standard. So compared to the other standard, here we are dealing with kind of a very lively thing, right? In fact, it's about the living animals and plants. So when it comes to biological assets, it's all about living animals. Living animals and plants, no? living animals and plants. So that is about the biological asset, right? So when it comes to this living animals and plant, yes, as I expressed, as I told you earlier, so it is very different from the rest of the asset. So, you know, most of the time you are working with things that is not having a kind of a living aspect. It's about, if you take the PP, it's a non-living aspect, right? If you take any intangible asset, if you take any financial asset, those do not have a kind of a lively substance. But here, that is different. It's all about living animals and plant, and that is used for, most importantly, used in agricultural activity. So that is the most important thing, right? So they must be having some sort of a relationship to the agricultural activity, right? So otherwise, even though they are biological asset, so they may not qualify to be treated under the LKS 41. For example, if I give you a very practical example, you might see that, so when it comes to most of the tourist attraction, say that the hotels, right? So if you take the hotels, the very famous one, so they'll be having sometimes the elephants or even the other animals, right? Maybe the horse, likewise. But in that particular case, they are using this living animal not for agricultural activity, right? But that is for the recreational activity, or it's something to do with providing entertainment with the tourist or the visitors. So hence, these elephants or maybe the horses, they may not qualify as a biological asset that is to be treated under LKS 41. So instead, they would be treated under LKS 16, that is PPE, right? So that is the difference. So therefore, the most important aspect, I would say that when it comes to this biological asset, it's about living animal and plant, but that must be used for predominantly for an agricultural activity. So therefore, that is the key thing, right? Must be occupied for agricultural activity. So then only they qualify. So that is the very first point that I want to make. And then when it comes to this biological asset, basically you would see two aspects, no? Even as the definition itself says that it's about, in one hand, it's about animals. On the other hand, it's about the plant. So hence, basically, it talks about basically two things. One hand, it's animals, living animals, and on the other hand, it's plant. And when it comes to these animals and plants, the living animals and plant, you can further divide. If you have really gone through this, you can further divide this into two categories. What is that? So when we take plant, you can divide this plant as either bearer plant or consumable plant. Consumable plant, right? Similarly, you can apply the same classification for this animal. So there would be some bearer animal and consumable animal. So depending on the nature of the agricultural activity, you can do this kind of a classification. So it's about bearer and consumable, or bearer or consumable. The bearer animals, bearer plant, consumable animals, consumable plant. Then let's take some examples for each of these categories, then only this would be more convinced. So if I start with this plant category, if you take a bearer plant, it's simply, as the term suggests, it bears an agricultural produce. So that's a simple term. So the meaning of the bearer plant is that it bears or it contributes to produce agricultural or it contributes to production, let me say, right? The production of agricultural produce. So that's what it says. So basically, if when it comes to a bearer plant, in a simple word, you can say that it is a kind of a plant that bears agricultural produce, right? It gives you a agricultural produce. So if I'm to take some examples, let's say that if you take simply a mango tree. So if you take the cultivation of mango trees, what is that? So we basically have these mango trees that is to harvest the mangoes. So hence, when it comes to the mango trees, it's a bearer plant. So it gives you with the mangoes. Similarly, if you take the tea bushes, right? It's very important biological asset. It's a very important biological asset. Again, it provides you with some of the agricultural produce. So it's about the tea leaves. So you're not going to consume the entire tea bush. Instead, you may simply picking the tea leaves. So therefore, tea bushes, again, it contributes to gives you with a kind of agricultural agricultural produce. And most importantly, when it comes to these trees, it will not only produce this agricultural produce for once, but that may produce the agricultural produce for a more than one reporting period. So that is the nature. That is the very nature. So if you take mango tree, you are not going to simply get the mango harvest for one time, or it's not just limited to the harvest for 1 year, but it may even extend beyond that, maybe for 5 to 10 years. Hence, so it will contribute to generate this agricultural produce for more than one reporting period. So that is the nature of this bearer plant. So even you can take the rubber. So that is also the case, no? So we are not going to take the entire tree. So simply we are going to take some output from there, no? So likewise, there can be certain plants, even if you take the grapes, right? So that in that particular case also, the grapevine, right? Grapevine would basically provide you with the grapes, right? So likewise, you would have seen plenty of examples in your uh, lecture materials as well as in the standard if you refer to. So that's about the bearer plant. And when it comes to consumable plant, so here what basically happens is that, so when the plant becomes mature, the plant itself becomes the agricultural produce. In the sense, that is going to be the end of the living process, or we call it technically the cessation of the living process. So when it comes to the consumable plant, what happens is that when it becomes matured, it becomes what? The cessation of the living process. And the plant itself becomes the agricultural produce. So then the layman's language, I might say that the plant itself becomes the agricultural produce. Agricultural produce. So that's what it happens. So if I'm to give some examples, so think about, what about the teak? What about the teak plantation. Does that give any agricultural produce like in the case of mango trees or tea bushes? No, that's not the case. So we are simply cultivating this teak. Once it becomes matured, we are going to cut the tree and we are going to use it for timber. So hence you can see that that is going to be the cessation of the living process once they become matured, and that dictate the cessation of the living process, or the plant itself becomes the agricultural produce. So that is the destiny of this consumable plant. So they become the agricultural produce itself. So it means that is the end of the living process. So that is the end of the plant. But when it comes to the bearer plant, that was not the case. You have seen that it simply bears the agricultural produce. But here, the plant itself becomes the what do you call agricultural produce. So the teak plantation is one classic example. Then if you can come up with some more, what else? We do the teak plantation, the mahogany plantation, everything goes same. Other than that, what are the other plants that become consumable? That we basically do that for the what do you call for the consumption. So once it become mature. So at the moment, it's just the teak plantation and the mahogany plantation. Those are what comes to my mind. So if you can add some, so you can add them. So that's about them. So even I have the standard as well. We'll see some examples. Trees for timber plantation, basically that's the case now here. Paddy, okay, good. So when it comes to the paddy cultivation, that is the case. But when it comes to this paddy cultivation, there's one concern that if you consider there are what do you call that the period of living, it's roughly over 3 months time. It's roughly the 3 months time. So since it is having kind of a very shorter lifetime, usually they do not qualify as the agricultural produce. They do not qualify as the agriculture, but instead they may be simply uh, considered so by the inventory most of the time. So there you do not recognize that as an asset most of the time, the paddy. And also you come up with the coconut. In fact, coconut also, I think it's more or less not most of the time for the purpose of what you call the consumption, but instead it's more about the bearer. No, if you take coconut, so it comes under this category. No, so we are primarily not planting the coconut, that is to take it as the timber out of that, but instead we may be taking some produce that is a coconut out of the tree. So hence the coconut trees would fit in this category, right? So good, thank you very much. So your attempts are appreciated. So likewise, yeah, at the moment we may simply go by this. It's more or less the plantation what we do with the intention of consumption. Coffee, yeah, it's again fits in the category of bearer. No? We are not going to take not going to consume the entire uh, coffee teas. No, trees we are not going to take. It simply again it fits with the bearer. Now we have plenty of examples on the bearer plant. Right, good. So you can think of likewise. Now let's move on to the animals. So when it comes to animals, the same. So they may bear some agricultural produce. So it is the detachment from the animal, detachment from the animal. So it contributes, as I took, in the production of agricultural produce. Agricultural produce. So like in the previous case. Therefore, no difference. So that works in the same way. So here also, that does not dictate the end, but you may be taking some agricultural produce out of that. So if you think about the examples like, what is that? So the living animals that may give some output, yeah, even the example, the question what we have taken, but about dairy cows. So if you take dairy cows, basically, we are not keeping these dairy cows that is for the purpose of meat. Instead, that is to harvest some milk. That is to take some milk from them. So therefore, the dairy cows is a classic example for bearer animals. Bearer animals. It's a very, yes. So very correct. How about sheep? Right? How about sheep? Right? That is for the purpose of yarn, right? I think we take the sheeps. So that would be the case. Yeah. Good. Very correct. Sheep. And likewise, you can think of some examples where they would give some agricultural produce and that does not dictate the end of that particular animal. So the bearer plant, the dairy cows, the sheep are the examples what we can identify at the moment, but you can think of many. You can think of many. And so on the other hand, if you take the consumable category, yes, like in the case of consumable plant, it's about the cessation of the living process. So, or I would say the animal itself become, in simple terms, the animal itself becomes the agricultural produce. Agricultural produce. So that is going to be the case in the sense, so that is the cessation of the living process. So if you think about some bulls that we keep for the purpose of, or the cows or the bulls that we keep for the purpose of consumption, for the purpose of meat, and if you take simply, what about horses? Uh, So in that, what is the agricultural produce that we are taking? Good. Yes, good. Uh, when it comes to the horses, are they doing a particular kind of output? Are we taking milk or something? Don't have any idea. I think no. So basically, they are, as I mentioned earlier. So when it comes to the horses, we are basically keeping it for the recreational purposes. No. So most of the time, we are using them for the kind of a provide with the entertainment, right? So hence it qualifies as the PPE, right? It's PP. Yes, you say that. No, it can't be the case with yes. Good point. Good point is there. It says that since you are using them, so during the works of in the lands, right? In the agricultural lands, they are being occupied. No, that is not the case. So here, when it comes to this standard, it look at whether they provide you with some agricultural produce or the particular biological asset itself become what you call the agricultural produce. ඒතර පුතා මේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකෙන් බයොලොජිකල් ඇසිඩ් කියන කැටගරි එකට ෆිට් වෙන්නේ එක්ක එයා අපිට දෙන්න ඕනේ මොනවා හරි agricultural produce එකක්. දැන් mango trees ගත්තොත් ඔන්න mangoes දෙනවා. So dairy cows ගත්තොත් ඔන්න අපිට milk දෙනවා. sheep ගත්තොත් එතකොට අපිට ඒ බැටළු හැම භාවිතා කරන්න පුළුවන් නේ. එතකොට අන්න ඒ විදිහට output එකක් එකට අපි කියනවා agricultural produce කියලා. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒ asset එක itself අපිට consumable කරන්න පුළුවන්. plant එකක් නම් ඒ plant එක consumable. එතකොට animal නම් ඒ animal. We know when it comes to the bulls we are going to kill them once they become mature and we are going to take the meat out of that. And similarly, if you take pigs, that is going to be the case. But when it comes to that horse, yes, that's true. They are used in the purpose for the works of this farmland. So in that sense, it becomes the PP. එතකොට ගොවිපළේ වැඩ කටයුතු වලට උදව් වෙනවා කියන්නේ අපේ primary business activity එකට contribute කරනවා කියලා. එතකොට අපේ primary business activity එකට contribute කරන ඕනෙම දෙයක් අපි දන්නවා PP. So therefore the horse it's going to be PP. Yes, very correct. It's pigs, bulls we can take, right? Yes, you can think about other examples. What about bees? Yes, very correct. How about bees? But when it comes to these bees, again, you need to think about the bees that you are using in a very controlled environment. So otherwise, the bees that is being left or that you found in the forest, that is not the case, right? Even the sea fishing, that is also not the case, right? So in these instances, what you the main criterion that would come into play is the control. So here in this standard, it says that when it comes to the particular agricultural activity, you must have a kind of a control over that particular biological asset. So therefore, if you are going to have these bees in a kind of a controlled environment, if you have the control over them, say that in a very well recognized area you are going to have them, yes, it becomes the bearer animals because they are going to provide you with honey. Very correct. But if it is something that is left on their own or they are simply living in the forest, no, that is not the case. So that is equally applicable even for the plants. The plants that is found in the forest, that is not the case. But that must be a kind of a activity that you manage. In the sense, you must have the control over them. So that's a key aspect. Eggs and chicken, yes, very correct. So you can consider that the chicken, so they provide you with the eggs. So those you can consider as the bearer, no? So likewise, this is about the biological assets, right? Then you might think that what is the very purpose of this classification? Because that is particularly important. You know, out of these 4 categories, if I take this bearer animal, the one category what we have discussed, the bearer animal and consumable animals, and also the consumable plants, we treat them under the LKS 41. So the applicable accounting treatment is dictated by the LKS 41. So මේ bearer animals, consumable animals, සහ consumable plants වල accounting treatment එක dictate කරන පුතා LKS 41. But when it comes to this bearer plant, it's a special one. The bearer plant, the standard identifies that bearer plant must be accounted for using LKS 60. So that's why I went for such kind of a classification. In fact, you have discussed them in detail, but just to highlight that point again, right? So the bearer plant is treated under LKS 16, that is PPE, while the rest of the asset, the rest of the biological asset is being treated under LKS 41. That's how it works. Yeah. Hence, for the purpose of eggs and bearer animals. Yes, very correct. Yeah. Yeah, we can take that, the hence, yeah, for that purpose. No, produce treated as LKS2. No, so I'll come to that, Uta. I'll come to that, right? Okay. Now it's LKS41, right? Then let's look at what this LKS41 says. It's about the uh, measurement at recognition, right? When it comes to this agricultural, the biological assets, so initially you need to measure. You need to measure them at what value? As per LKS 41, it says that it's fair value less cost to sell. Fair value less cost to sell. This is about the measurement at initial recognition. Right? එතකොට දාලා LKS 41 එකේ කියනවා අපි ගාව ඉන්නවා නම් bare animals, consumable plants ඒවා අපි measure කරන්නේ fair value less cost to sell. Then what about the bearer plant? So it is as per the LKS 16, so it must be valued under cost. So that is the difference. Then how about the measurement? Or the subsequent measurement, or I would say measurement after recognition. So it is again need to be measured at the fair value less cost to sale. So when you come to the bearer plant, since it's PPE, you can either go for cost model or the revaluation model. Right? So these are the differences in accounting treatment. And most importantly, right? Most importantly, these changes in or the remeasurement gains and losses, I would say. So the measurement after recognition, in the sense you need to remeasure them at each reporting date, then you would be having some remeasurement gains and losses. That must be recognizing profit or loss. That is another important thing, profit or loss. Right. So here, this is what we do. So we'll be recognizing the gains and losses on the remeasurement, that is on P&L. Yeah, then you ask that what is the reason for this difference, in the sense why bearer plant being treated under LKS 16 and why the rest of the biological asset being treated under LKS 41. So in fact, there's a logic, Puta. Yes, it's a good question. There's a logic on why they would do that. Because when it comes to this LKS 41 initially, you know, all the categories being treated under what you call LKS 41. එතකොට මුලින්ම උදාලා මේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක ඉෂුව කරනකොට තිබුණු තත්ත්වය තමයි මේ සියලුම assets treat කරේ LKS 41 යටතේ. Right? එතකොට the problem what they have, the practical problem what they have encountered is that, so you know, here, you know, at each reporting date you need to remeasure. In this remeasurement, it would result in gains or losses. So when it comes to these gains and losses, you can see that that is basically or predominantly it is unrealized, right? But it still allows us to take these gains and losses to the P&L, right? Then frankly speaking, the unrealized profit and losses are eventually being taken to the P&L. Then if you take these unrealized profit and losses to the P&L, so that will enhance your bottom line. So that will increase your bottom line. So if you are having a huge bottom line, then based on your profit, showing your profit, so if the management wishes, they can declare dividend. They can pay dividend based on that. So in fact, that is what it has happened, right? Then when it comes to these four categories of asset, this remeasurement gains and losses, which was having a significant impact, was this bearer plant. ඒක බදාලා ඇත්තටම ඉස්සරෝම ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක අඳුන්ලා දෙනකොට මේ කැටගරිස් හතරම කිසිම වෙනසක් කරේ නැහැ. LKS 41 යටතේ මෙෂර් කරා initially සහ subsequently fair value less cost to sell වලට මෙෂර් කරා. එතකොට ඒ ආව gain and loss P&L අරන් ගියා. එතකොට මේ විදිහට P&L අරන් ගියාම මොකක්ද සිද්ධ වුනේ? අසාමාන්‍ය විදිහට unrealized profit P&L එකට ආවා. එතකොට P&L එකට profits යනවා කියන්නේ එතකොට අපේ bottom line එක වැඩි. ඒ මත බේස් වෙලා අපි dividend ගෙවනවා. එතකොට අනවශ්‍ය විදිහට ආයතනයේ ඇත්තට මේ වගේ cash නැහැ. නමුත් අපේ profit එක huge profit figure එකක් ඒක බේස් කරලා අපි ලොකු dividend එකක් pay කරනවා. එතකොට ව්‍යාපාරයේ තියෙන liquidity එකට අසාමාන්‍ය විදිහට impact වෙනවා. එතකොට මේ තියෙන categories හතරෙන් මෙහිම remeasurement gains and losses වලට significant impact එකක් කරන්න පුළුවන් category එක තමයි bearer plant කියන්නේ. එතකොට අපි ගත්තොත් teak plantation, if you take mahogany plantation, so in that when it comes to this remeasurement, so these profits were huge. There were huge profits. So based on that, so it will completely distort the true picture. So over the years, the standard setters had identified that and they thought of taking this category simply out and treating it like PPE. And also, there are some justifiable reasons as well. So they're being used more than one reporting period, and they are used in the production of agricultural produce in the sense that contributes to the primary business activity. So hence, then in nature, it looks like more or less the PPE. So therefore, there are some strong argument to take this bearer plant as PPE. So that was the logic behind that. So that is simply to avoid the unintended consequences of this standard. So it had ultimately resulted, or it had negatively impact the organizations. So that was in fact the case, as I heard that in the case of this Touchwood company. So just to disclose some companies who had ultimately struggled because of this unrealized profit, having paid huge dividend. Those that particular company is a classic example. So those who have suffered, right? So that's why it has been simply taken out. But when it comes to the rest of the asset, even when it comes to this consumable category, at the end of the day, after some time, definitely it's going to be resulted in the ultimate realization. So therefore, no harm in recognizing these gains and losses in that. Even when it comes to the bearer animals, the reality is in most of the time, using these dairy cows or sheep, right? Even the hens. So once they is not going to be producing some agricultural produce, they may be simply sold out. So in the sense, the gains and losses would eventually be realized. Right? අවසානයේ ඇත්තම තත්ත්වයේ තියෙන dairy cows, sheep වගේ දේවල් ගත්තත් එයාලගෙන් තවදුරටත් agricultural produce එකක් එන්නේ නැහැ කියලා දැනුණාම එයාලව අපි විකුණනවානේ. ඒකට අවසාන වශයෙන් that's a reality. So therefore ඒක realize වෙනවා. So standard එකේ logic එකට හානියක් නැහැ මේ assets වලට, right? Good. Why not the gain and losses categorized under comprehensive income? No, so that's the point. So as I mentioned that this is going to be realized, no? So if you take this, the consumable animals, the consumable plants, it's going to be realized in the soon future, right? Hence, there's no harm in taking them to the P&L because that is something going to get realized, right? That would have been the reason, but they do not reason out why they take that to the P&L. But I think because the realization is highly probable. Since the realization is highly probable, it's good to take that to the P&L. So that would have been the reason. Yes, some consumer plant as investment will one day be revised to be recognized as investment property. No, when it comes to investment property, basically the standard says that it's about they define that it has to be land and building. The land and building is only what qualifies as investment property. Yes, some people would make it as investment, but it's not going to be the investment property. If that is the case, that particular definition has to be broadened. At the moment, it's about the land and building. Good. Yes, that must be the way you should think. Good. How to get these fair values on the animals? Yes, good. Good question. Very practical one. So when it comes to this fair value, the most of the time when it comes to the advanced economies, they have some auction markets for that. For the animals with a particular weight, a particular height, with some particular features. So they are having a kind of a market price. But in countries like Sri Lanka, we do not find a market for that. So in the sense, as you have learned the fair value techniques, so we cannot apply the market price. The market approach is not possible in a country like Sri Lanka. But if you take the predominantly agricultural countries like New Zealand, Australia, you would see that in those territories, that is the case. So they have auction market. When it comes to the countries like Sri Lanka, what is the feasible option is that they can use the discounted technique. Say for an example, when it comes to this mahogany plantation, you know that the mahogany plantation may maybe take 15 years to get matured, no? 15 years to get matured. Then if you are in the year 0 or today, so if you want to measure them at the initial recognition, which is at the fair value less cost to sell, what you can do is you can forecast your cash flows in 15 years. Say that you are going to sell these trees for some value, say 5 lakhs or whatever, and get a proper discount rate and get them discounted and establish the value today. And that is the value of your mahogany trees. So you can do this for the bulls, cows. So that's the case. Even I think some of the market information is also available for this consumable animals. So even if not, you can think about the maturity and think about the value at which you may sell them and get them discounted and establish the value. That is your fair value. Good. So that is how we basically do. And also this is a kind of area which is going to be which is going to make that the financial statements more subjective. So we need to realize that the reality is that these areas would certainly make the financial statements are subjective. So when it comes to the estimates, so that is the inherent nature. So that makes the measurement basically subjective, right? So we've been discussing about the measurement. Good that you have raised certain questions. Good. When it comes to fair value less cost to sell, then how the treatment, the double entries would go, you would debit the asset and you may credit the P&L. So the initial recognition basically happens like that. So if you take, it is simply the asset that would get debit, right? It gets debit, the biological asset, then it gets credit to the P&L. So that is a consequence of measuring them at fair value. But in some instances, you might find that at the initial recognition, you may be incurring certain cost. Then in that instance also, you need to take that cost credit to the cash. Then still you need to look at what is the fair value less cost to sell and look at the difference and take that difference to the P&L. So we are going to work out some questions similar to that, but just to tell, right? So it's about the biological asset. So far I discuss about the biological asset. So ඒ විදිහට තමයි පුතාලා biological asset එකට treatment වෙන්නේ. So initially අපි recognize කරනවා fair value less cost to sell. ඒ වගේම at each reporting date we are going to take them at fair value less cost to sell, right? And the remeasurement gains and losses would also go to the P&L. Then, as you ask the one question, what about agricultural produce? Agricultural produce. So when it comes to this agricultural produce, the standard says that you need to measure the agricultural produce at fair value less cost to sell. Cost to sell. At the point of harvest, let's say it's about cows. So when it comes to the dairy cows, you may be taking the milk, the harvested milk. The harvested milk, you may be having certain number of liters and get them multiplied by the fair value less cost to sell. And that is the valuation of the agricultural produce. So when it comes to the agricultural produce, measure them at fair value less cost to sell. Again, the gains and losses from this measurement should result in P&L. The gains and losses would be taken to the P&L. Let's say that you have harvested 10,000 liters. Say that 1 liter is rupees 50, fair value less cost to sell. So there you can see 10,000 into 50. It's going to be 500,000. So this 500,000, so take it, debit the agricultural produce, the milk, harvested milk, debit, credit, P&L. Then you ask me, what about the inventory? Should we treat this agricultural produce under the LKS too? No. The standard very specifically says that when it comes to this agricultural produce, at the point of harvest, you need to apply the LKS 41, right? තොරපතාල මේක මුලින්ම අඳුන ගන්න වෙලාවේ අපි apply කරන්න ඕනේ LKS 41. ඊට පස්සේ subsequently you can apply the inventory standard. Let's say that having harvested this milk, you are going to process them. Then you can add that process cost, cost of processing, and treat it as the cost, right? Because the standard says that when it comes to the inventory, you need to measure them at lower of cost and net realizable value. Then when it comes to the application of inventory standard, the agricultural produce, what you have recognized at fair value less cost to sell, this is going to be the deemed cost. එතකොට අපි කල්පනා කරොත් ව්‍යාපාරයක් මිල්ක් ටික harvest කරනවා, ඒ harvest කරන මිල්ක් එකම විකුණනවා. එතකොට කිසිම value addition එකක් මොකුත් නැහැ. අපි ඒක harvest කරා, initial point එක අපි කොහොමද fair value less cost to sell වල recognize කරා. ඊට පස්සේ ඒක harvest කරාට පස්සේ inventory. එතකොට ඒක අපි inventory එක. එතකොට inventory standard එකට එනකොට එතනදි කියනවා මේක treat කරන්න කියලා මේ fair value less cost to sell අපි අඳුනගත්ත එක ඒක තමයි inventory වල cost එක විදිහට. එතකොට valuation එකේ කිසිම වෙනසක් නැහැ. වටිනාකම 5 ලක්ෂම තමයි. එතකොට මේක value කරලා තියෙන fair value less cost to sell. එතකොට අපි ඒ harvest කරපු විදිහටම විකුණනවා නම් agricultural produce සහ inventory වල කිසිම වෙනසක් නැහැ. But where the difference comes, having harvested this, let's say that you are going to do some value addition. Let's say that you are going to do some packaging. අපි හිතමු කරන පොඩි value addition එකක් විදිහට packaging එකක් කරනවා කියලා. එතකොට unit liter එකකට අපි හිතමු cost එක රුපියල් 5ක් අපි හිතමු 10ක් විතර යනවා කියලා. එතකොට 10 into how many liters? 10,000 liters. එතකොට මේ cost එක add වෙන්න ඕනේ. Right? එතකොට මේ 500,000 වලට මේ කියන 100,000 cost එකත් add වෙලා තමයි යන්නේ inventory වල cost එක එන්නේ. So inventory cost එක ගන්නකොට අපි කියවා මේ fair value less cost to sell treat it as a deemed cost. ඒක තමයි inventory standard එකට අනුව අපි ගන්න ඕනේ cost එක. එතකොට මේක තමයි relationship එක. So initially you need to measure them at fair value less cost to sell, and if you further process that and take that cost and add them, and that is the cost of the inventory. So if you are simply selling them in the form that you have harvested, it's simply the inventory, but it's simply the agricultural produce as well. Like agricultural produce. The harvested produce. So ඒ වගේ close link එකක් තමයි inventory සහ agricultural produce අතර තියෙන්නේ. Right? So that's how it works. So here also the gains and losses. So here we take this 500,000. So it simply goes to the harvested milk harvested milk, it gets debit 500,000. So in fact, that is your inventory as well, and that gets credit to the P&L. Take a P&L credit pen. P&L credit 500,000. That's it. Is there any difference between the agricultural asset and agricultural produce? Yes, that's what I'm telling, right? We are not referring as agricultural asset, but we call the biological asset. Biological asset is what gives us the agricultural produce. The biological asset තමයි මොකද අපිට agricultural produce එකක් දෙන්නේ. The plant, animals, consumable bearer එයාලා තමයි අපි කිව්ව විදිහට මොකක්ද අපි කිව්වේ biological asset. එතකොට එයාලගෙන් අපි ගන්න detachment එක සමහර ඒ වගේ, right? එතකොට අපි දැක්කා මේ bear plants වල, bear animals වල අපි දැක්ක ඒක detachment from the agricultural detachment from the biological asset. එතකොට මේ වගේ තියෙනවා detachment එකක් නේ. dairy cows ලගේ milk ටික. mango trees වලින් mangoes ටික. tea bushes වලින් tea leaves ටික. එතකොට ඒක detach වෙලා ඉන්නේ. right? එතකොට ඒක තමයි bearer plant එක. එතකොට ඒ detachment එක තමයි එතනදී අපි consider කරේ agricultural produce කියලා. එතකොට මේ consumable එක අපි කිව්වා the asset itself. Once it matured, the asset itself become the agricultural produce. එතකොට agricultural produce එකේ අතරම දාලා කොටස් දෙකක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට ආ ගිහිල්ලා බැලුවොත් standard එකට ඒක define කරලා තියෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා. Agricultural produce is harvested produce. Right? Agricultural produce එකේ එතකොට අපි ගත්තොත් harvest කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් detachment of the produce from a biological asset, like mangoes out of mango trees, tea leaves out of tea bushes, milk out of cows, and the cessation of a biological asset's life process. එහෙම නැත්නම් biological asset එකේ ජීවිතයේ අවසානය වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඒක තමයි අපි කතා කරපු අර teak plantation, mahogany plantation කියන්නේ, right? Sheaves, is this a term that we should use? The fluff, oh, I don't get that. So I'm not aware about that, to be honest. Right. Okay. So that's about a kind of a simple, what do you call? Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a correct term, no? Yeah. So when it comes to sheaf, it's fluff, neighbor, right? So take long. එතකොට එයාලා අයිති වෙන්නේ අපි ගත්ත විදිහටම bear animals, no? Bear animals, yes. Sheep comes to the bear animals. So when it comes to that agricultural produce, the same applies. So you need to measure them at the fair value less cost to sell. That is the agricultural produce. Okay. Right. It's a kind of a summary, but I don't believe that it's a summary. It went than expected, but it's still good to have such kind of discussion to make the things clear. And now let's move on to the question, and with that understanding, let's look at what it is about. Question number 1, we have just read that. Let me allow you, say, 5 to 10 minutes time to try that out, and then we'll see that. Yeah, again, one question that you asked, that what about the agricultural lands? Yeah, agricultural lands, yes, it is again PP. It's again PP. So there, in fact, this is specifically addressed even in the standard. So, you know, when you have that the land with some biological asset, there you must be finding out a kind of a way to distinguish that cost from the kind of the biological asset. So in that particular case, that you may be able to sometimes take a kind of valuation for the entire land together with the biological asset, the first instance. Then you may be able to work out the fair value of the biological asset. Then if you take the difference, and that is going to be the value of the land. So that's going to be the value of the land. That is just to tell that the how you are practically supposed to measure them. I think you're asking that what happens to the land preparing cost. Right, you're asking about the land preparing cost, no? Yeah, it's just it's a kind of a, sorry, I didn't get that question. I thought that you're asking about the agricultural land. No, land preparing cost, it's a expense. It's an expense with regard to the consumable plant. It's a expense because here the requirement is that you need to measure them at fair value less cost to sell. You need to measure them at fair value less cost to sell. So that's what you're looking at. So whatever the other expenses that you have, so it has to be an expense. So whatever the cultivation, the improvements, everything must be charged to the PMA expenses. Good. Yeah, very good. So in that particular case, again, you have to ask a fundamental question, whether we take some agricultural produce out of that. So if you do take agricultural produce out of that, that's it. So it's a biological asset. So here, if it just helps, if you are not specifically taking something out, I think that there's no agricultural produce that comes out of the plantation එක වර්ධනය යොදා ගන්න ශාක. ඒකට අපි දන්නවා විවිධ දේවල් භාවිතා කරනවා ප්‍රැක්ටිකලි මොනවද විවිධ පැතිවල විවිධ නම් කියනවානේ සමහර ලාඩප්පා කියනවා එතකොට අපි වැටහිරිය කියනවා විවිධ නම් භාවිතා කරනවා ඒ දේවල් අපි භාවිතා කරනවා එතකොට ඒක simply an expense if you have spent some cost on that because it's true that it helps but it's more like a kind of fertilizer, isn't it? It's kind of a fertilizer. It serves as a fertilizer. So in order to eligible for them to be recognized as the asset, it must be having a kind of a lifetime of more than 1 year. So otherwise, everything is an expense. So whatever the fundamental aspects that is relating to an asset must be there. But asset එකට අදාළ criteria ටික තියෙන්න ඕන. අනිවාර්යෙන්. Good. Right. Okay. So would like you to just have kind of look at this question and just have some rough sketch, then we can work that out. So I think that the easiest way to work this out is going to be having some what do you call what do you call that the T accounts. T accounts will help. For the cows, take one T account, and for the calves, take another. Biological asset considered under case 41 until it gives agricultural produce, and after it, you have to produce subsequently. That is that considered as inventory. Yes, that's true. So agriculture, the agriculture standard is only applicable only at the point of harvest. Soon after the detachment, it becomes inventory. So at the point of detachment, you need to measure them at the fair value less cost to sell. Yes, if your understanding is correct, that's the point. So if I just take two accounts for the purpose, because we have one mature biological asset and also the immature biological asset. And it's about cows. Right. So just have a look at that. Let me copy this. Right. At the beginning of the period, it says that you have 60 cows. The fair value is cost to sell is 75 per cow. So at the beginning of the period, that is the balance brought forward, right? It is not the initial recognition, right? It's simply you are doing this for some time. So therefore, it is simply the balance brought forward, right? You don't have to recognize anything initially. Simply the balance brought forward figures are being given. 60 into 75,000. Right. Let's take the figures in thousands. But that helps. Yeah. It's 4,500. Let me take the figures in thousands, right? And also here we have 25,000 per. You can't see the Excel, sorry. Okay. So let me share the screen. Right. Now I think you can see that. Okay. Right. Initially, I take the balance brought forward. It is 60 cows at 75,000. Then we have 25,000 per calf. That is 20 calves, right? So again, it's the balance brought forward. It's 20, and that is into 25,000 or something. Yeah, it was 25,000. So it is simply the balance brought forward. So we start with that. Then let's proceed. Then it says that you purchase 20 cows at rupees 87,500 per cow. And at that date, the fair value less cost to sell is also given. So it's a kind of initial recognition. Initial recognition. So you know initial recognition has to be made at fair value less cost to sell. Fair value less cost to sell. Right? Then you are given the cost information. So you have paid something that is 87,500. But the fair value less cost to sell at that time was 90,000. Right? Per cow. So that is 90 into 20 is what you should recognize in the cow section. It's 90 into 20. It's 1,800. But here, most important thing is that the recognition of the gain or loss, because that is the most important one. So if I provide the double entry here, you can see that here the cows are getting debit. How much? That was 90 into 20. But here you have paid something, isn't it? It's not for free. You had to pay something. And you had to pay 87.5 thousand to 20 cows. So you had to pay 1,750. So therefore, out of this recognition, what was the gain? Not the entire 1,800 නේ. මුළු 1,800ම අපේ gain එකක් නෙමෙයි. මොකද 1,750 මුදලින් ගෙවුවානේ. එතකොට ඒ recognition එක නිසා අපිට වෙච්ච gain එක තමයි 50. So this is how it works in the reality. Not the entire thing may become a gain, but there can be instances the entire thing would become the gain. But here, this is the thing. So this is about the gain on initial recognition. So here comes from the cash. So if it is more meaningful, let me put it like this. You pay 1,750 and 50. That is the gain. All right. Is that clear? So if anything you are not getting, please do let me know, right? It's a kind of initial recognition As per the standard, the consumable biological asset, we had to measure them at fair value less cost to sell. So we did. Then it says that the 12 calves were matured as cows. And at that time, the fair value less cost to sell per cow stood at 88,000. So during the period, these 12 cows had become matured. So it's possible, right? So they have become matured. Then the fair value less cost to sell per cow stood at 88,000. So කාලච්ඡේදය ඇතුලේ මේ හිටපු වහු පැටව ගෙන් 12 දෙනෙක් මැචුවර් වුණා. එයාලා එතකොට කවුස්ලා විදියට අපි ගන්නවා. ඒතර එයාලගේ වැලියු එකක් තියෙනවා දැනට. ඒතර අපි ඒකෙත් රෙකග්නිෂන් එක ගත්තොත් අපි රෙකග්නයිස් කරන්න ඕනේ අර විදියමයි කොහොමද fair value less cost to sell. මම හිතන question එකේ දීලා ඇති fair value less cost to sell it stood at 88,000. 88,000ක් වුණාලු. එතකොට 88 into 12, that is 1056. But here also a particular value is there for these calves, right? So therefore you need to take it out of the calves at the carrying amount, and that carrying amount was initially we had recognized them at 25,000 per cow. So in this value it was 25,000. So 25,000 into 12 calves, it's going to be 300. So hence here also it results in a gain, and how much is that? That is again the difference. මෙතන සම්පූර්ණ එකම gain එකක් නෙමෙයි. ඒ biological transformation එකෙන් අපිට gain එකක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ කවුස්ලා mature වීම තුළ අපිට එතන අපිට තියෙනවා 756. Again it's a kind of a initial recognition, the gain on initial recognition, right? The cows. So here we have again we transfer it from the out of the calves. So it takes out from that, it's 300. So here it comes 300, that goes to the calves, and here we have 756. 756, that is the gain at the point of initial recognition of the calves. So on cows la initially recognize කරන point එකේ අපිට එතනක් gain එකක් ආවා. එතරම් 1056ම අපේ ගේන් එකක් නෙමෙයි මොකද මේ කාප්ස්ලාට වටිනාකමක් තිබුණානේ. ඒතකොට යාලා ඒ කැටගරි එකකින් අයින් වෙලා කාප්ස්ලා විදියට යනවා. Right? Then it says the 15 calves were born during the year and fair value less cost to sell of the per newborn calf is 15,000. ඒතකොට කාලච්ඡේදය ඇතුලේ කාප්ස්ලා 15 දෙනෙක් බිහි වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒතකොට එයාලගේ fair value less cost to sell at the point of birth it's 15,000. So අන්න අපිට එනවා මෙතන 15,000 into, is it 15,000 or 25,000? What was the value? It was 15,000. So it was 15,000. Right. So මෙන්න මේක entry එකක් ලිව්වොත් the initial recognition එකක් මුළු amount එකම gain එකක් නේ. You can see that when it comes to these calves, you can see that no cost is involved. No cost is involved there. So the entire thing is turned out to be a gain. So that is the initial recognition. Initial recognition. So මෙතන බැලුවොත් අන්න අපිට පේනවා මුළු amount එකම අපේ gain එකක්. Fair value less cost to sell විදිහට අඳුරගද්දි කිසිම cost එකක් තිබුණ නැහැ. කිසිම carrying amount එකක් තිබුණ නැහැ. නිසා entire thing is a gain. So it's a example. So that's why I told you in this example you'll be exposed to all the possibilities. So you can see that in the initial recognition the entire thing becomes a gain, and the some gains are there, right? So that's how it works. Right. So it's about basically the biological assets. You have two categories of biological assets, the mature biological assets and also the immature biological assets. Then we are moving on to the agricultural produce. It says that during the period you have produced 10,000 liters of milk at fair value less cost to sell of rupees 50 per liter. Right? It's about the agricultural produce. For the agricultural produce, you can have a T account as well. It's agricultural produce. So when it comes to agricultural produce, again, it was said that you need to recognize them. It's about, sorry, it's harvested milk, no? Harvested milk. Let me use the name, the specific name. Yeah, it's true that it's agricultural produce, but more specifically, harvested milk. It's 10,000 liters at 50. It's 10 into 50. It's 500. And the entire thing, you can see that this time also, it's again, it comes at a no cost. Kisima cost එකක් involved වෙලා නැහැ. So you can see that the harvested milk gets debit. How much? It's going to be 500. And for the P&L, it goes 500. Take on a harvested milk wallet, entire thing, agricultural produce. You need to initially measure them at fair value less cost to sell. As a result of that, you have recognized a gain over there. It's about agricultural produce. Let me use a different color for that. Right. Then it says, out of this, you sold 9,000 liters. You are not going to do any value addition. You are going to simply sell 9,000 liters. Okay, it's simply a sale. So you have to recognize it's simply a sale. You made a sale and it's for cash. So it's a sale, and also there must be a corresponding cost of sales. When it comes to sales, you can see it's 9,000 into 8. It's 9 into 80. So this is your sale. You may receive cash. Let's say it's a cash transaction. But at the same time, you are going to lose some milk, and it comes at a cost. And it was, you're selling 9,000. And at the fair value less cost to sell was rupees 50 or something. Yeah, it was 50, no? Yeah, it's 50, so it's 450. That is your cost of sales. So you take it out from the inventory and take that to the cost of sales. Cost of sales, right? So it's about the sales and the cost of sales of agricultural produce related. Then it says that you incurred salaries and other operating costs 800,000 and distribution cost 200,000. Those are simply expenses, operating expenses. You have 800,000 and distribution cost 200,000. They are simply expenses. Now, as at 31st March 2020, now it's about the remeasurement, right? Now you have come to the remeasurement, the balance carried forward. So when it comes to this remeasurement, the balance carried forward. So you need to look at how many cows are out there. So initially, now we need to do a simple working. Initially, there were 60 cows. 60ක් හිටියා මුලින්ම. ඊට පස්සේ 20ක් මිලට ගත්තා. Purchased. ඊට පස්සේ 12 දෙනෙක් mature වුණා. Yes, මේ ටික තමයි එතකොට cows ලා විදියට ඉන්නේ. Now you can see the amount of cows over there. It's like 60, 80, 92. 92 cows measured at each cow at, what's the valuation? 92,500. 92,500, that is into 60, 80, 92. 8,510. 8,510. So that is the valuation. So then let's look at whether there is a remeasurement. Again, I think this may be the greatest value. 8,510. Let us just look at whether that is the case. from the remeasurement, whether there's a gain or loss. Yeah, so it's a remeasurement gain. So this is a remeasurement gain. So from the remeasurement, you can see that 1154. 1154. So if you write a double entry on that, you can see that it's mature biological assets, it's cows that got debit 1154 and it got credit 1154. That is to PNA. That is to PNA. Because the remeasurement gains should also be taken to the PNA. This is about the remeasurement. Remeasurement. So this is about the agricultural produce. And this is about the measurement at initial recognition. Initial recognition. Right. So that's it. So this is a remeasurement of cows, and we have witnessed that there's a gain. Similarly, you can do the same for the calves. You can see that now how many calves are out there. So initially you start with 20 calves. During the period, 12 had become matured and you have taken simply them out. And during the period, 15 calves were born. Okay, yeah, that's it. So it's 3 need to be added, it's 23. The balance carried forward, it's 23 into, what is the value? The calf. It was 27,500. It's 23, 27,500. 632.5. It's altogether, it's 933.2. And once you take that, so it's again remeasurement gain. So even there can be losses, but here in all the instances, we have witnessed gains. So it's about the calves. Now you can even recognize this is a kind of the damn reality, because you know when it comes to this agriculture, sorry, when it comes to these biological assets, they are going to get transformed over the years. So their valuation may tend to go higher and higher over time. So hence you may, most of the time you may encounter the gains are there. But when it comes to that, here these gains are not necessarily realized. So that's the one problem. So once you take these gains, you can see that your profits would go up, but they are not realized. So based on those figures, if you declare the dividend, then that could be problematic. Hence, you need to be very conscious if you are especially an entity operating in the agriculture related business. So not all the profits what you see, even if you are an investor, you should also must be alert that not all the gains are realized. But sooner or later, they may be realized, but at the moment, they are not realized. Okay, so this is what it is expected. So you are supposed to work something out, work out something like this, and then you can simply go and provide the answers for the things that is requested. Yeah, before we move on to the answer section, yes, would like to ask you, is that clear to you? Anything that you're not comfortable? So you may be having suggestions. It's good that you'd like to see that this is being a kind of conversation, since it's a tutorial one, not necessarily a lecture. So therefore we can discuss the different things. good. Okay, fine. Thanks. Right. Then let us go and try to fill the requested things out. Okay. Calculate the total income recognized of the dairy farm for the year ended 31st March 2020. You have different kinds of income during the period. No, the first you can see that gains on measurement at recognition. No? Gains yeah. Gains on measurement at recognition. So some of the gains had resulted at the measurement of recognition. At the initial point of recognition, you have seen some gains. You can see that here 50, the 756 and 225 all are measurement at recognition. Let me put them into a one category. It was 50 and 756 and also 225. So if you take together, so if you simply add them, it's 50, 756 and 225. It's 1031. So there's a gain 1031. 1031. Then we have seen there were some gains at the recognition of agricultural produce. Gains on the recognition of agriculture produce. Agricultural produce. So there you have witness. It was 500. That particular gain was 500. Ne? Teka 500ක් තිබ්බ gain එකක් agricultural produce එක recognize කරලා remeasurement gains තිබුණා අපිට. That was 1054 and 207.5. If I take them all together, it was 1361.5. 1361.5. It's about the gain on remeasurement. Of biological assets. We have two categories, the matured one and the immature. So from both the categories, it had contributed for ultimate gain. Biological assets. Right. So that is the third category of income. You have another category. What is that? It's about the sales. Sale of goods. Sale of harvested milk. Harvested milk or the agricultural produce, or even you can say the output, right? Because here you are not adding any value and simply selling them. So it's even the agricultural produce, 720. So there is another income. So altogether, you can take how much is your income. So if you add everything together, I think you can manage 1031, 500, 1531. It's 1531 plus 1531 plus 1361.5 and 720. So it's 3600, 3000, 3000, 3612.5. Yeah. Okay. So calculate the profit or loss of the dairy farm, the next one. So now you have the income that is recognized, 3612.5. 3612.5. Okay, you take that. Then the expenses. So most importantly, you have that the cost of sales were there. That must be one of the major expenses, cost of sales, and it was 450 as you witnessed. And then you have again yeah, the question had said that there was operating expenses, right? You incurred operating expenses for cost of 800,000. So it's a major expense. Operating expenses. Operating expenses here. It's 800. And then you had also distribution cost 200. Distribution cost. That can also be a kind of expense. It's 200. So once you take that, so there you can get the profit from the operations of this entity for the ended 31st March 2020. It's altogether 1,450. 3,612 minus 1,140. So it comes as 2,162.5. So that is the gain what you have made. Okay, so it's about the statement of profit or loss. So you must be able to manage something of this nature. Even I have just indicated the marks as well that was given. It was like 11-mark question. Provide an extract of the statement of financial position of the company as at 31st March 2020, distinguishing between mature and immature biological asset. So the question would specifically ask us to take these biological asset into two categories. One is about the mature biological asset. One is about the mature biological assets. So there you have how much mature biological asset. We valid them. It was 8,510. 8,510. It's 8,510. And then you have the immature biological assets. It's about the calves. It's immature biological assets. And that is you had 632.5, no? 632.5. 632.5. So not only that, you had some inventory as well. So that must also be recognized, the inventory or the harvested milk inventory harvested milk. You have something left. It's not solve the entire thing. 450 was the cost of sales, so the balance carried forward, that was 50. So that must also be shown under that. Okay, so this is about the biological asset. Right. So you must be able to manage something of this nature. So if you take the things in a systematic way, it's just go and applying the things. So it's about a kind of rough sketch that you need to have the different kinds of categories and what are the things that is accounted for under LKS 41, and what about the LKS 16 application, and how about the initial recognition, the measurement after recognition, remeasurement, gains and losses, and here also the gains on the initial recognition as well, no? Gains on the initial recognition. That must also be recognized in P&L. So this is it. So this is a rough sketch. So if you have this, you can apply that to whatever the question that you would get, and you can successfully complete that, right? So it's about the biological asset. So I just wanted to discuss with you this, what do you call that, the employee benefit, especially with reference to the defined benefit obligation, defined benefit plans. So in fact, I got ready 2 questions, but I find that so I might need to take you through a kind of a small what do you call the summary, and then thereafter working out the question. But now I feel that the time does not permit us, hence I'm not going to take them in a rush. So let us keep that and let us arrange a tutorial for this, and also some of the 2 lectures that you may be doing in future, that is about the EPS as well as the share-based payment. So I might be taking a couple of tutorials to help you with this, and then we may leisurely discuss them. So rather than simply rushing them now. So we've been discussing for nearly 2 hours now. I think that's good enough for the day, right? Okay, then if you have any question on what we have discussed so far, now it's time to come up with that. Then, yeah. So if you have anything to add or anything to get clarified, yes, now it is the time. So before we wind up, put the questions here. So you will find so far anything that you're not comfortable. So I might upload this answer as well, and also share past papers. Yeah, in fact, usually the past papers are not being shared. Let me see that at the end of this course, having discussed with the coordinator, that if there's any possibility that we can share one of the past papers with you. So that has to be checked, right? Let me look at that. Is the remeasurement gains on biological assets recognized under OCI? No. So we have just, that's what we did, right? The remeasurement gains and losses, where we have taken everything, we have taken to the P&L. You can see that these are the different income categories. So therefore you can see these are the remeasurement gains. So we have recognized them in P&L, everything in P&L. So that's the thing. It's about the bearer plant you are asking, no? Good. When it comes to bearer plants, yes, the applicable treatment is LKS 16. So if you are going for the remeasurement, sorry, if you are going for the revaluation, so then if there's a gain, go to the OCI. So if it is a loss first time, go to the P&L. So it's simply that accounting treatment of the LK 16 is what that is applicable. So you can see even there would be multiple questions even on the internet. You may search that, you may try that. So whatever the question that you would come across, better take that and yeah, we can discuss them even further. තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න මොනවද කියලා බලන්න පුතාලා ඒ ටික අපිට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Okay, then with that note, I think that's enough for the day. Thank you very much for the participation. Then see you in the next class.